So the Premier has long been a fan of Mark's work, and I think you can see why, given that you've just heard his talk. And I've also been a fan for quite some time, since I read some of his work when I did my Masters, probably about 10 years ago, and I thought, yeah, you know, that actually makes a lot of sense to me, because a lot of the sort of academic articles that you might read, or the management sort of texts, tell you that we should all be looking to the private sector to think about efficiency and how we should do things. And that's not to say that we can't learn something from that, but to have a methodology that really speaks to what we're trying to achieve in the public sector is, to me, an incredibly valuable thing. So I just think it's fantastic that we've got a framework that helps us to understand and work through difficult problems, provides some how-to guidance for us to help us to become more responsive, flexible, and also promotes a culture of creativity and innovation. And I think as well it does speak a lot to what we're here for as public servants, because I don't think I've ever spoken to a public servant who doesn't actually get up out of bed every day and come to work to make a difference. And what I think the public value framework helps you to articulate is, well, what is that difference in my agency? So I just want you to, I went too far there. I just want you to do a little exercise for me, and it's not a challenging one. I'm not going to get you up and ask you to shake hands with people or fall backwards or do anything like that. It's simply to imagine that you're a cabinet minister. So there they are, our cabinet, the new cabinet, and I want you to imagine this scenario. So just think if you were sitting there on a Sunday night, you're a cabinet minister. Say on the Thursday and Friday you've been interstate at a ministerial meeting. On the Saturday you had a lot of constituent events that you had to attend. On the Saturday night you went to a dinner with the Premier, so a business dinner that you had to represent the government at. And then on the Sunday you had to go to an event again representing the government. So let's say if you're the Minister for Multicultural Affairs and you had to attend a cultural event on the Sunday. So you've had a pretty busy time, as we know our cabinet ministers do. And then, of course, you've got your bag of cabinet information that you've got to read for cabinet on Monday. So let's say you've got 11 cabinet submissions. That wouldn't be unusual. You might have 12 notes. You might have, say, briefings from the Cabinet Office. You'd have briefings from your advisors. You'd have briefings from chief executives of other agencies telling you what they think of the Cabinet submissions. And let's say there's a Cabinet submission which has a 300-page attachment, which again isn't completely unusual. So there you are sitting on the Sunday night thinking, I've actually got to get my head around all of this for the Monday morning. So I think when you put yourself in the place of some of our cabinet ministers, and I mean they're very smart people, they understand their constituents, they're across their portfolios, but we're asking them to deal with a lot of complex information in a relatively short period of time. So part of our aim in designing a new cabinet submission template and a cabinet process was to help them be able to come to grips with that information quickly. And what we need agencies to be doing, and those who are writing cabinet submissions, is thinking about how to get the attention of cabinet on the right things. And this is where I think, again, the public value concepts come in and are very helpful, because if we're able to describe succinctly the public value of the proposals that we're putting forward, then that helps us to articulate that to cabinet and helps cabinet to understand the things that we're asking them to make decisions on. So now I know you won't be able to see this. I'm not expecting you to be able to read it. But what we've done is redesign the cabinet submission template along the lines of the strategic triangle. So we're asking you to tell cabinet the details of your proposal We're asking you to outline the public value, we're asking you to outline the legitimacy and support, and we're asking you to outline the operational capacity. And one of the things that we've done is included a table, which is a public value account that essentially says to you, try and say in a few dot points what you're really trying to achieve to Cabinet. Because as I said earlier, Cabinet ministers are very, very time poor, and we're asking them to make complex decisions. So really what we've got there in the public value account is a little bit like a sort of cost-benefit analysis, but it brings in those additional public value elements that Mark was talking about earlier. So for example, and this is one of the ones that's in the template just for people to have a think about, is one of the things that you might want to achieve, or the public value that you're going to deliver through this might be, for example, we're going to introduce a law that says you can't smoke in public eating areas, and we think the outcome of that and the public value of that is that we are going to reduce smoking-related deaths by a certain number per annum. And again, as Mark's outlined, what we want to do is try and talk about, well, what's the justice and fairness of that? So we may think that that does increase justice and fairness because it means that people who don't smoke don't have their sort of rights infringed by sitting out and, enjoying a meal out in the fringe or something like that, and then having then passively smoking at the same time. So one of the things that you will notice when you have a look at the new template is that you would have difficulty filling it out if you haven't done the background work on the public value, and if you don't have that legitimacy and support, if you haven't worked with your stakeholders to get them to help you understand what that might mean. So the proposed reforms include the Cabinet submission template, but that's not the only thing that we're attempting to do. And of course, as we've mentioned already briefly, there are already tools that are going to assist you with this. So we're saying that we want you in the Cabinet submission, when you're putting things forward to Cabinet, we want you to be able to articulate the legitimacy and support. But that's obviously got to have started way back when you were developing your proposals. So that's clearly not something that you're just going to do once you're coming to Cabinet. That's really something that you've got to have thought about when you're thinking about the problem that you have and the thing that you're trying to solve. So what we've asked Cabinet to note, and this went to Cabinet in January, and they've noted the fact that we are developing a new Cabinet submission template, but also they've noted that we're going to adopt public value as the consistent planning, monitoring and accountability framework in the South Australian Government. Now, as I mentioned before, we've got lots of tools to be able to help you do this. So this is building upon a lot of the work that we've already done in the public service. So Better Together, which has been mentioned already, and Reforming Democracy. We've already got quite a lot of information on the website about that and specific initiatives that a lot of people are involved in. And also we've got our modern public service policy, which I think Irma's going to talk about soon. The other thing that we've been working on in Cabinet Office with the Health Department is some tools and some information to help you all collaborate together. So as Mark mentioned earlier, a lot of the big problems are the ones that are cross-agency, the difficult problems that we're trying to solve. And when I set up the Policy Officers Network, and I can see there are a few people here today who are part of the Policy Officers Network, one of the first things that we did is look at how can we collaborate together. And the thing that surprised me is that people do see that there are quite significant barriers to collaboration. So we're developing some tools and some assistance for people to be able to work their way through that. So of course, once we've got a public value proposal, it's got through Cabinet, there's an implementation process. Now, as I mentioned briefly, part of the strategic triangle is, of course, that you've identified how you're going to operationally deliver that. So what's your operational capacity? Do you need to work with partners to do that? So, whether it's Royal Adelaide Hospital, whether it's an environmental project, whether it's service delivery on behalf of government, you've got to deliver on something. But how do we know that that's actually been successful. So you've got your public value account, you've got your statement, you know what it is that you want to do, but how are we checking that you've done it? So we are going to be thinking about how we introduce some performance coming back to Cabinet. So how do we actually capture that information and make that visible to Cabinet so that we've got the full sort of cycle of both development and then through to implementation and performance measures. So in line with our values, of course, we're going to be working together with you on all of this. These are some big reforms, and we want people to be imaginative and innovative and to be out there creating public value in their agencies. But we won't just say to you, here's a piece of paper, over to you, and expect you to go and do it. We'll certainly be working with you. There'll be training and there'll be information that we'll be providing. And of course, the start of that today is the On the Couch session, which Mark, I know, is really, really looking forward to being part of. So I'd really encourage you to think about your questions and to put those on the poll event so that we can make the best use of that time. Thank you very much.